All right, it's way past my bedtime. I mean, it's pushing 9 o'clock. That's what happens when you get old. And we are coming live from the man cave on the eastern part of Virginia. So we're back down here at BB's. We hunted today. Had to catch the dogs off. Bear kept coming through blocks that we weren't supposed to be in, and after about the third one, we was able to round them all up. So we're going to get back after it tomorrow. So today we're going to do a little recap of training season. BB just got back from Maine. We're going to talk about it just a little bit. And then we're going to go into group hunting. You know, how can we be successful? What are some do's, some don'ts? We had a conversation today, and this kind of brought the topic up. So we're just going to nail it down, and we're going to dive into it, and hopefully it'll help. What I have learned, in fact, I was talking to a guy from Idaho, Casey, just the other day, and we were having this conversation. He said, do you guys hunt in groups? And we're like, yeah, we pretty much. I do hunt by myself some, not often, because somebody's always with me or somebody's hanging out or whatever. And he's like, we pretty much hunt by ourselves. And, I do like that for training purposes. I like to be off by myself. And I know you've heard Pal whine about it, that I'll get off by myself and strike and turn dogs loose. And then I'll say, hey, guys, we got one going. But that's just kind of me. That's kind of what I like to do. So we're going to dive into it. So, BB, I know we've been at it all day today. So how's things in your world? The Journey on Houndsman XP has teamed up with One TDC. This dual-action support for oral health and mobility in our dogs. This unique supplement is so effective that it is recommended by top veterinarian experts worldwide to maintain and improve our dog's health in 4 different areas. Their oral health, hips, joints, and muscles, skin, coat, energy, and recovery. Guys, I've been using this product for the last 6 months, and it has been a game changer for me. If you're looking for something to help with the overall health of your dog, go to worksowell.com and give this product a try. It is highly recommended by Houndsman XP here on The Journey.
Everything's good here.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the new edition, because that's a new thing.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's a new thing. Yeah, so my little boy, he's definitely a handful from time to time. So
2 months old?
Yes. Yep. So still getting used to the hunting environment and having a little boy. So, but it's still fun.
So I'll tell you a funny one. So we was in the kitchen earlier, and she's like, "Yeah, I got to go back to work the end of this month, and I'm just worried about it. Like, I don't know if BB can take care of this or not." So she's gonna probably have people coming in and checking on him to make sure that the little one's all right.
I'll figure it out.
Yeah, you learn trial by error, and we have a lot of error. That's for sure. There's no pamphlet on raising a kid. That's for sure. So tell me a little bit about your Maine trip. I know you didn't do a whole lot of hunting because...
Yeah, so Maine was good. The first week there was a lot of rain. So it rained I think just about every day we hunted the first week. So hunted pretty hard. I think we got 3 the first week. Hunted with some different guys, never hunted with them before. But we ended up making it work. So I think we took 3 bears the first week. Well, actually 4, but three bears taken with the folks I was hunting with, and then the Friday I went to where I was going to be hunting in the North Maine woods, and we got a pretty good boar that Friday. So I think we ended up with 9 total in 2 weeks. So the first week, the dogs didn't do too good. They could have done a little bit better, or I could have done a whole lot better. But we ended up the second week. We got through some hurdles and they came around pretty good, so it worked out
pretty good.
Yeah.
So, and this was all new territory for you too, wasn't it?
Yes, everything was new. So up in that North Maine woods, this big country, and you had to learn how to get around and what roads were actual roads and what roads weren't roads, and so it was a lot of learning involved in that. So
yeah, I can. Like I said, in fact, I was up there this summer, and we were up around some of the same area that you were in. There's a lot of distance between those roads.
It took us 1 hour to drive from one side of the block to the other side of the block.
Yeah.
So it definitely, that time frame and trying to work around that and to be efficient in that area is key for sure. So.
And you said some issues. Do you care to elaborate on that, or do you want to keep that to yourself?
I mean, the dogs, they just, we had a hard time. I carried a lot of young dogs this year. We could jump bear, and then I had, some off-game issues that I had to work through, but that off-game isn't around here, so I don't have to, I don't have any way to break them here until I get up there. So did a little bit of that. Did see some impressive dog work. I did have 3 dogs swim a lake 220 yards across the lake, and then another fella, he had a dog or two that swam it as well. But that bear, he didn't want to get caught. He swam a lake, and then 800 yards later, he swam another lake, and they made the first lake, but they didn't make the second. So he got away. He got to run another day.
I mean, that's absolutely draining. I was up in New York several years ago, and the dogs went through this big section of country, kind of like what you're talking about, and they were on the other side of the lake. And the lakes, I mean, it's not huge, but you're right. It's a couple 100 yards across it. And I got to hollering, and they got in and started swimming to me. They weren't running. They were just coming to me. Mm-hmm. They got halfway out of the lake and then turned back. Mm-hmm. And, of course, I went over to my box and rattled my box and got everything barking. And then they made that loop, and they turned, and they come back. And by the time they got when they got up out of the wall, I helped them up over the bank. And the dogs were in pretty good running shape at that time, too. It wasn't like I hadn't been hunting. But, yeah, it absolutely just drained them.
Yeah, a couple 100 yards swimming that's especially after they've been running a little bit, that's definitely it can separate them, So I was impressed. I mean, I had a 14, 15-month-old puppy make it across, and then a 2.5-year-old dog or so, and then an older dog. But they did pretty good. I mean, up there it was some mountain where we hunted the first week. It was a little bit more mountainous. That might have played some issues in it, but overall it was more the rain, just trying to work through the conditions and weather conditions and everything. So, and learning the country. If I'd known some of the country prior, like if we went back there now, I would be much better off. We would be, I could help, some of the flaws that happen, make sure I was there, get around and save a little time. Whereas that time, when they're running and things like that, it's key to get around there to one, make sure they're right, or two, if you need to pack dogs in, or even if it's time to harvest the bear, that learning the country is definitely a key aspect to it, and the more you know it, the definitely more effective you can be.
Well, I mean, you're losing 2 to 3 days of hunting, really. Mm-hmm. I like I said, I was thinking about it today. I've been very fortunate. I mean, you travel more than I do right now. Hopefully, as the next couple years come on for you and I had this conversation. The next couple years, I'm looking to be more vested in more hunting traveling throughout. You know, I've hunted Maine, I've hunted Canada, you know, New York to Florida. When I was coon hunting, I basically hunted every state from Texas to Iowa east. So my bear hunting's been pretty limited to, you know, Virginia, North Carolina, you know, being able to come down here and hunt with you and Doug. And I haven't been to Maine in a couple years. And I hadn't been to Canada since 2002. So we're getting ready to make that trip in the spring. I'm really looking forward to that. Maddie's going with me. And I'm stoked to be able to go up there and hunt. And then you and I we'll talk about it later because we don't know if it's going to come to terms yet. But if not, we're going to take a big trip in the fall next year. So, you know, that's something I want to do. I want to travel more and get out. But when I did travel and hunt, it takes you a couple of days to know the shortcuts and the roads and, you know, this and that. And I always find myself, just like what you're saying, is, well, if I'd have went over there to start with, I could have cut those dogs off, or I could have packed right there, and they wouldn't have gotten this big country. And so, yeah.
Yeah, it's and traveling too, you know, when you're carrying dogs, it takes them some time to get acclimated, you know, really, you know, in all honesty, it takes probably 2 weeks of being somewhere to get them really tuned in, to really see that full potential come out of them. And, you know, to do what we did in 2 weeks. And last year I was in Maine for 3 weeks, and by the third week they were firing on all cylinders. But this year it was rainy and hot. It was definitely a lot warmer this year than what it normally is, which normally doesn't bother us too much since we deal with the heat down here. But you know, I didn't run as much this year with the little one here prior to going up to Maine. So, you know, they weren't really where they needed to be before I went up there. So,
yeah, I knew, like I said, I knew you hadn't hunted because of, you know, him being born, and it was hot when we were up there in July. I mean, we talked. I got to hang out with Brandon and Mark, and they said that it had been it had been wetter up there than normal. Mm-hmm. So anyway, yeah. So I'm going to talk about my training season. I know that I hit that in a prior podcast. I'm just going to kind of just kind of go over it real quick, kind of tell you what I'm working with, where I'm at. And then we're going to get into some, you know, just like BB and I was talking today about group hunting, how to be more successful, you know, some do's and don'ts, some things that we see, you know, because we do get to travel around and see other dogs and see other people work. And what brought this up is I've been coming down here for 3 years now. And, you know, I told BB that the first time I was down here, I mean, my dogs were kind of out of pocket. Like, they didn't really understand what was going on, different type of hunting, different style of hunting, different country, thicker. And then, you know, I'd come back the next year and got to come back a couple times, and you could see an improvement. And then today, it was just like I'd turned them loose at the house. There wasn't no hesitation. It was just like me hunting at home. And I'm glad that I'm seeing that with them, because I feel like to have a true hound, you should be able to dump it anywhere and catch bear, not just where I'm at or where you're at. That's just my thought process. But so I didn't, my Kate female, which is, Kate Spook are 4.5. There'll be 5 this winter, coming first of the year. Kate, I bred her, so I didn't hunt her. I've not had her out since last December. So she missed a whole training season. Just didn't take her. And I was hunting Spook and Maggie. Maggie's an older black dog that I have that I bought to replace my blue dog. And so I was alternating Spook and her. Take Spook one day, take her one day, take Spook one day, and her one day. And in several days, when I say the young dogs, I'll just say this is what it is. I've got Houdini and Hart are 2.5 years old, and I've got Attica and Axe, who are 19 months old, and I've got Rogue, which come from BB. He's 16 months old, somewhere right in there. He may be 17 now, but 16 months old. And I got Trip. Trip is turned 3 in end of September, so he just turned 3. And I've got, y'all have heard me talk about Sass, little female I got from some of my buddies up in West Virginia. And she will be 8 months old at the end of this month, which is October. And I am having to contain my excitement because she has so much potential. I see the potential in her. She runs hard. I had her out a couple weeks ago, and I was walking into an area. So I'd turned her loose, and golly geez, about the third track she struck and run through the country. I was like, I got to put her back on the lead. I'm going to be catching her in the next zip code. So I ended up catching her up, putting her on the lead, and she walked with me the rest of the time. And I said this prior, like, I'm so scared something's going to happen to her because I like her so much. Like, that's just my luck. That's how things roll. And I'm excited about the potential that I see. I don't know that she'll ever be a top-notch hound because she's not even 8 months old yet. But when I'm looking at dogs, I see a world of the things that I like in her. And I like her. She's got a great personality. She is personable. She don't want to be caught when she's running, I'll tell you that. She gets gone, and when she's running something, she will avoid you like an old dog. So I think that's a positive, even though it's a pain in the butt at this point. So that's what I'm hunting right now. In a couple days that I was out either by myself or just one other person hunting with me, I'd take the younger dog. So every female I had come in heat. So Hart was out of service for 21, 25 days from August till second week of September. Attica, same thing. She come in. She was out of service till right after Labor Day. So she missed a whole 3 weeks of hunting. So I only had the male dogs, and Maggie had come in, but she went out. So I was able to hunt her after the second week of August. So she missed a couple weeks too. So I just took the young dogs a lot. Not a lot, but I took them several times, give them opportunities. And I was telling BB we rode down to the feed store today, and I caught a bear with him one day. I had a long race one day with them, and one day I don't know what they did. They run something, and I'm still not convinced it was a bear, but I didn't see it. I can't smell it, and I don't know what it was. And then one day they actually split off from Spook. Spook took a bear across the mountain, dropped down across a road. Bear jumped right out in front of me. It was a small bear. So I was able to get out in front of him and catch him off of it, and they went on around the mountain, which I'm sure it was a sow and a cub because it was a small bear, and they ended up treeing about a 150-pound bear. But they went another 2 miles around the mountain and treed. It was just them, the younger, and I don't know how people categorize their dogs. What do you call a 2.5-year-old? Is that a young dog? Is that a...
Yeah, I would, I would say it's a young dog. Some people will call it a puppy.
Yeah, no, they're not puppies.
But no, yeah, I would say that's probably a younger dog. But 2.5 years old, I think they should be they definitely should be. You should have a little bit of confidence in them, with what you got there.
Well, and you say that, and I'll just put out my preference. Like if it's a puppy, it's under a year old. Mm-hmm. If it's a young dog, I usually 1 to 3 is where I kind of hang with that, and then after that, that's kind of where I'm at with the older dogs. And nothing I had, like Maggie, she turns 7 in May. Like I said, Spook and Kate are 4.5, and then everything else is 3 and under. But one thing that you said there that I want to touch on is I'm getting to the point, and they're, like I said, they're 2.5. I free casted them several times during training season where I, free casting for the guys that don't know or maybe don't big game hunt is I take off on foot. I'm just hiking a trail or a ridge top, or I hit the AT or something like that, and I just leave some dogs loose. I always have a dog or two on with me, and I was able to turn those two, the 2.5-year-old dogs loose, and surprisingly, even when Sass would go in there and strike those tracks, which I'm very confident it was a deer, they would go and they would follow her for 50 or 100 yards and they turn and come back. So that's starting to build that reliability. Okay, okay, I know that they're doing this, and I feel pretty comfortable with it. I give Hart a lot more leeway than I give Houdini. And Houdini, I seen a coyote crossing the road one day, and I jumped out, got the dogs out of the truck, turned them loose, and he went out of there screaming. And, before I could get, I wasn't prepared as I should have been. I honestly didn't think they would take off, but he did. I just tapped him a little bit. He come right back. So I don't trust him as much. Hart did not do that. He did. So I'm still a little bit leery of what I allow him to do. And that's okay because he's 2.5 years old. I'm not going to be completely upset. Now, if he was running deer like that, then that's kind of on me because I've had several opportunities to fix that problem. And you guys heard me talk about it before. I take every opportunity. If I'm out hunting and I see a deer walking down the side of the road or across the road in front of me, I get my young dogs out and I give them the opportunity to go. Now, I don't let them go. Usually in fact, I've been working on Rogue. He had a couple trash races in the beginning of August. And as I got to see deer and I got to put him out, like I've got him now where he'll get out, put his nose up, and come right back to the truck. So just taking those opportunities to do a little training and a little, trash breaking sessions. Like I take everyone I can get because you just don't know. But yeah, so the 2-year-olds are doing better, and I'm able to, like I said, Hart was doing really good. There's a couple of days that I had her out and free casted her. One day she never opened her mouth. During the early kill season, I'm pretty sure her and Attica opened on the track that that Spook ended up jumping and bringing down in front of us. They went up in this it was a dried up creek bed that went up towards the top of a ridge. It was in a hollow, and they opened a couple times. And anyway, Spook went up there when they opened, and he never come back. But they ended up coming back, crossing the road. They went down over the ridge and opened a couple times and went down to the main creek. Well, Spook stayed up there and was making circles. And anyway, he ended up coming out the top side of that. He opened a couple times, crossed a couple ridges, and then by the time he hit that third ridge, he was moving. Mm-hmm. So I feel like they hit that track and just didn't stick it. I could be wrong. They could have been doing something else. I don't know. But just through my experience with what, travel patterns of bears, stuff like that, I feel like they hit it and just didn't have enough experience to stick it out like he did. And we ended up, catching that bear too. So anyway, but yeah, that's kind of where I've been. Had some good days, had some bad days. And I, like I said, me and BB had this conversation today. The bear that we was on today was a runner. Mm-hmm. Like that bear did not want caught. And, at home, I had a lot of races that were longer than normal. Mm-hmm. Normally, a 5-mile race is about average. 7-mile may be a long one. I caught my dogs off of a race one day that was right at 16. When I had my buddy down from Kentucky, the race was a little over 11 miles. Had several of those races this year, more so than not. I think it's due to a couple things. I think it's due to hunting pressure. The areas that I hunt is very, very populated with hunters. And I think, the bear just kind of get, I don't know if you can say they get accustomed to it, but I think they learn that if I just stay down and keep running, I can get away. So I think that played a part in it. But we had a lot of long races, longer than normal. Still not catching any bear of of size, but normally during training season we may see one or two. Have not the last couple of years. Doesn't mean they're not out there. We're just not seeing them in the areas that I hunt. So, yeah, training season was good. And we're going to talk about that here in a little bit when we get to talking about groups and stuff. But I tried to give my younger dogs, and I say younger, more opportunity to learn. Because I would hold, there was several days that I didn't even turn Spook loose or Maggie loose. I let them do it. And then if I needed to, I would pack the old dogs in, and I don't even think I'd done that, actually. I think I just left it up to them. So, yeah, it was a good season. I don't know how many bear we treat. I keep a log of it at the house, but it's more for who done what, not how many for me. Mm-hmm. You know, I want to see the progression of the dogs, and I'm very pleased with the A litter. They're not, like I said, they're 19 months old, and both of the dogs that I have will take their own track. They'll start their own tracks. They'll run by themselves. They don't need help. They have not treated a bear by themselves, but they'll go on with it. So I feel like, well, you and I talked about that today. I feel like they'll come along, with. Just keep after it.
Yeah, I mean, for me, you're always looking for, and when it comes to the young dogs, you're always looking, or for me, I'm looking for the dogs that always put out that little bit of extra, do something real, that surprises you and does something, a particular day that you consider a good job or something that's or even if they outdo the old dogs, or the older dogs, that's what I look for is with the younger ones, and those are the ones that I like to focus on. And I mean, for me, it's I've recently moved some dogs along that were older, just so that way I could make sure I focus on some of the younger dogs. So. Yeah, I mean, that's my thing. I mean, I had them for Maine just because I like to have 2 separate packs for Maine, so that way I can alternate every day and have fresh dogs every day. But, here, when we're hunting in a group, you don't necessarily need that, because you don't need the number of dogs when you're hunting with other folks, 'cause if they have dogs too, to be able to have fresh dogs every day, and then, make sure that you give those younger dogs as many opportunities as you can, so that way you can see what you got, with what you got coming up. So, and then it just gives you a better chance to learn them, to understand what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are, and then maybe what you can work on to try and bring them over the edge to make them those outstanding type dogs.
So, what do you say to a newcomer that has got or let's not even say a newcomer. Let's say somebody's been hunting for a couple of years, and you've got a dog that's reliable. I don't care if it's an older dog, a 3-year-old, 4-year-old, 5-year-old, 10-year-old. I don't care. A reliable dog. How do you talk yourself into leaving that dog at home, knowing, because I hear this a lot, knowing that if you take old Billy up here, you're going to catch a bear. But if I leave Billy at home, my chances of catching a bear are slim. I've got to let these young dogs learn and do their own thing. How do you talk yourself into that? How do you go about that decision? Do you like to be outside like I do? Hunting, fishing, hiking? If so, Onyx is the app for you. I've been a loyal Onyx user for years. It's the one app that I can honestly say I use daily. While hunting, I know where I'm at all times. I mark trails, bedding areas, feeding areas, and the list goes on. In my travels, I use it to pre-scout all the new places that I am blessed to hunt. Last year, while hiking Yellowstone, I used Onyx to map out the trails and know the difficulty of each one. And here's a secret. I mark all of my favorite fishing spots on Onyx. It's been a game changer for me at work. I've used it multiple times to get in touch with property owners. Onyx has so many great features and tools, you can literally use it in your everyday life. It is by far the best mapping app on the market. And hey, it's approved by yours truly at Houndsman XP. So when you go to subscribe to OnX, use our code HXP20 and get you a discount. So get your journey started with OnX and know where you stand.
I mean, for me, with me, some of these dogs that I just moved along, it's, not having them available. I hate leaving a dog at home, but at the same time, at least I'm fortunate enough to be able to hunt enough that I can alternate dogs every time I hunt, and they still get plenty of experience. So, but yeah, it's hard. It's not easy to do. I'm always the type that I'd rather have them in the box and have them there in case I do need them than not have them and then need them. But at the same time, sometimes you got to make a little bit of a leap to get to that next stage, especially with those young dogs. You got to have some faith in them just based on what you've seen and what their progression has been throughout, their life. Some of them are pretty young. So, when you start relying on a 15, 16-month-old dog to help you in a pack, that's one of those things that's a special instance, when you can reliably say that or have confidence that dog at that age is going to help you out. For me, that's what I'm looking for. So, and to be honest, that's what I expect. And if they can't do that at that certain age, then, I'll give them away to a deer hunter or something like that, because they're not going to make what I'm looking for.
So you know what broke me, it broke me of doing it, but helped me change my thought process, is I had a couple of older dogs, Bell and Ring and those dogs that I could go out and catch bear with. And when I brought up the young dogs behind them, I always put the old dogs down first. And then when those dogs got old and they couldn't go, I was stuck. I had Me Too dogs or dogs that were standing there looking for somebody else to go along with them. And I had to change I had to change my training process. I had to say, okay, I have got to, if I'm going to continue to hunt, this is a long term, this is the big picture, not the short term. And this season, like, I know that if something happens to Spook and Kate or Maggie, I'm going to have to do it with the dogs that I have, or I'm going to have to go out and buy me another dog. Like, I'm going to have to. And I know that I can catch bear with those dogs, but I know that if I don't allow these young dogs the opportunity to learn, then when something does happen to them, I'm going to be right back in the same boat, even though I've got 6 or 7 other dogs here. And it was a hard lesson for me. I got in that predicament. I relied on Ring for everything. And then I had Jimmy and Buster, and I would even let Ring rig the track and then put Jimmy and Buster down to run it. And then I got where Ring got so old, I ended up leaving him at home. But Jimmy was a medium-nosed dog. She was not a dog like Ring. And Buster did not rig like Ring at all. So my bear catching, my bear treeing, literally almost fell in half from him to them. And I didn't like being in that situation. So I started changing and then I went through a rebuild and kind of changed my philosophy a little bit about, like, I've got to let these young dogs, I've got to get them lined out, get them on bear, understand what you're running, getting them, opening them on them, and then I take the older dogs away. That's kind of what drove me to that decision. So, and it's not easy. But at the same time, it's exciting too when, like this year, the first day I had 4 dogs. I had Houdini and Trip, Axe and Rogue. Had my 4 young male dogs. And come around the side of the mountain, the dogs struck on top of the truck. And I turned them loose, and they made a loop, come back out the mountain, dropped off the mountain. Of course, we're getting ready to talk about this in a second. Hot Rod and Wes was down at the bottom, and I told them, I'm like, hey, guys, I can't tell you what they're running. I said, they sound good, but they're coming off the mountain. And I said, before you pack your dogs, you better make sure, because I don't know. And sure enough, man, old Slewfoot stepped out in the road there, and they loaded him up and went about 200 yards and treated him. That was exciting for me. That was the first time with those dogs, without the old dogs, that I was able to run and catch a bear. And then, like I said, I had a couple other days where I'm scratching my head going, what are we running? Like, I didn't see it. I'm not seeing it cross the road. I don't have Ring in the truck where I can put him up on the rig where they cross the road to make sure. So it's a guessing game. So anyway, that's just my experience with that.
Yep.
Well, maybe let's get into the conversation that you and I had talked about earlier. And we didn't even really talk about it. We said, hey, we're going to talk about it. So let's talk about hunting in groups, how to be successful, some things that we should do when we shouldn't do. Like I said, guys out west, I'm sorry. I know you guys kind of solo hunt, and I'm envious because when I was 20 and 25 and 30, that's the way I like to hunt, is by myself. But here nowadays, it's, with the roads and the land cut up, it's kind of hard. So we do hunt in groups. There's a couple. Our group's probably got about 6 or 8 main people in it, and that's it. So what's on your mind?
Yeah, I mean, this conversation, I guess, is kind of driven basically from the first week that I was in Maine. Hunted with some guys, and they had never kind of hunted in a group. They've kind of been solo, and just some of the efficiencies that come from hunting in a group if you understand how to do it. And then there are certain things that you can do to try and or to be a little bit more successful within hunting in a group. And then as far as whether or not you're trying to get in front of or around blocks, big pieces, or things like that, and packing dogs, or even down to equipment. When you're hunting with a group, you can kind of disperse that equipment around and cost of equipment. So there's a lot of positive notes to hunting in a group. To me, I think there's a time and a place to hunt by yourself if you have that ability. I think as far as making and understanding what your dogs are doing, hunting by yourself is key. But when it comes to actual hunting season, there are some definite benefits to being able to hunt with a group. Just different situations that play out, whether it's a walking bear and you're trying to hit him, or cover different routes that he could go, and working together to have some success there, or whether it's busy roads and things like that, that you're trying to make sure that the dogs end up being safe, or or different blocks that you don't want them to go into because they're big, or it's posted, or things like that. So there are some definite benefits to hunting with a group, but it's I do think it's important to be able to hunt by yourself, because that's how you're going to learn your dogs. And then that knowing your dogs is even more important, I think, than when you're hunting with a group, because in order to help that group be successful, you have to understand the dogs and be able to communicate, potentially what your dogs are doing, so that way you know how that group can act to be successful.
Yeah. So equipment, we won't really go over that. You got to have a tracker. You got to have collars. But I will say one of the most beneficial parts of that group is a good truck man. And that, I think you just hit on that. We've got several guys in our group that have dog boxes, have the Garmin Alphas, long range antennas, and don't own a dog. Mm-hmm. But, some of the areas that I hunt, from road to road, it's 7 miles through there, 8 miles through there. And if I get in the middle and strike and they go over the mountain on the opposite side of me, I can't get out of there fast enough to cut them off. And especially if they go off the mountain, they're going to be on a hard top. So a truck man to me is invaluable. I can't say that enough. And we've got several really good people that do that. They come around and they pick us up. You've heard Chris talk about Clater. Clater was a great truck man, even though now we've got him set up with a dog. So now he's going to be a dog man. But you got to have people like that to help you function and be, like I said, dogs getting in a road is a big thing. We were hunting a couple weeks ago, and it was just me and Wes, and the dogs went over the top of the mountain, went into another big valley, made a big loop in there, and come back across the mountain, down off the mountain. Wes tried to cut them off on one road, and I went off the mountain to the hard top, and I couldn't get down there fast enough. And I'm telling you, I was sweating because Spook was getting ready to cross the road, busy road, and I'm like, dear Lord, please just let him get across. And by the time I got up to it, he was already 200 yards across the road and gone. And the other dogs were coming through, so I was able to, I let a couple that weren't far behind him go, and then the rest of them I ended up catching up. But I don't like this. It makes me nervous, very nervous, especially with your good dogs. So truck man is definitely part of it.
Oh, for sure. And having somebody who's able to, being able to read a situation, whether it's, if you have somebody that's, if you were hunting in a group and you're, wanting to pack dogs, or that person's wanting to pack dogs, and being able to understand, or hear or listen to the dogs and understand if they're running, if it's a running foot, or if they're walking and baying, or, different things like that. And then how to act, or whether to pack or not to pack, that's probably a question all in itself, or when to pack. So, there's different situations. If he's walking and baying, you pack him. It really doesn't matter the direction so much if he's walking and baying, but if it's a running foot and he's coming right for you, sometimes packing head on might not be the best thing to do because it can blow it up, or maybe you're better off to sit back and let the bear cross and then pack them with the dogs that are as they cross. Because I don't know how many times I've gone and packed, as soon as you've seen the bear and you try and get them going the right way, and all they hear is the dogs coming to the road or to the path, and then they end up going backwards, and they can basically add more time that you put behind the bear. So just understanding that and understanding your dogs. If you got a dog or two that that they're gonna, if you can get them the right way from the get-go, you might be able to save a little bit of that time and put a little gain on that bear if you're able to pack them. So just understanding that part versus just pulling up and dumping a box every time you hear dogs and packing is, having some thought process behind that before you do it is important when you're hunting in a group.
Well, let's talk about packing, because that was something that you and I had talked about, and we had talked about face packing, and today we actually did that. But there was a good reason why we did what we did. But let's just define face packing, and if the bear or the dogs are coming straight at you, you turn the dogs into them. So it's just like you're going to have a head-on collision. You got dogs coming at you, and you turn your dogs loose, and they're going away from you to the dogs that are coming at you. If the bear is caught, then it can be done. Mm-hmm. If like for me, a couple of years ago, and I actually talked about this on a podcast. I don't remember which one it was. That they had the bear caught on the ground, and I've got 2 dogs that are they don't babble. They don't leave out of their running. They're not going to bark until they get to it. And I know when they hit the track that they're going to line it out and go the correct way. They're not going to go backwards. I've done it enough with them that I knew. But the bear was caught on the ground, and I face packed them. I packed one dog in. When he got there, I turned the other dog loose, and when they got there, there was more of a roar, more going on, and we were able to get a couple more dogs in there and get the bear treed. If that bear is running and you face pack them, you're going to cause a train wreck 99% of the time, right?
I mean, yeah. I mean, from my experience, I mean, it's you know, you just run into, there's too many ifs in that situation, and if they're hit that track, and you know, and a lot of times you're packing young dogs in, you know, so they might hit that as soon as they whatever direction they're headed when they hit it, usually is the way they're going to go. You know, and then that's just going to run into the pack that's coming, and then it can blow it up. And it, you know, don't get me wrong, they might be able to sort through it, but at the end of the day, it adds that time that bear can put a little more distance between him and the dogs, and you know, that's what you're fighting against. I mean, that's your goal with packing is trying to make up that time versus trying to add more time.
Yeah. And so let's talk about it crossing, because I think this is a very – so I'm just going to throw it out there. One of my pet peeves is freaking dogs barking in the box. When you drive up the road and them dogs are and you're all the way up the road, like, I can't stand it. I mean, you want to see my blood pressure go up, that does it. So if a bear's coming and going to cross the block that you're in and you're sitting in the road, the best thing to do is let it cross. Mm-hmm. Don't you think?
I mean, unless you're trying to kill it. I mean,
right.
If you're trying to kill it, that's a different story. But I mean, if you're trying to catch him, you know, or whatever, or if he's got a big enough lead on him that you can't hit him good enough or well enough to kill him, you know, you're better off to kind of let him cross, and then either, I mean, to me, you know, and I've gotten excited and done it too. You know, you see the bear cross and you turn dogs
dump the tailgate
as soon as you see him, and you know, especially if he's got a lead on the dogs, pretty good. And you know, it depends. I mean, some places we have, if the wind's blowing right,
yep,
you can hardly hear the dogs coming sometimes, and you might see the bear cross out.
Today was example.
Yeah,
let's use today's example. Yeah. So BB was in a different block. And I never heard the dogs coming. Mm-hmm. Like, when you said they opened and whatever, but I seen the dogs coming towards me, so I stayed back. Mm-hmm. I didn't ride right up on where they were going to cross. I stayed back. Bear pops right out in front of me. I go up the road. I get Kate out. I send her, and I overrun the track. So this was on me. I overrun the track about 50 yards, and she run back down the road, hit it, and went the direction. I did not turn any of my young dogs loose until she got started. Like, I did not dump the box. I didn't, but I'm very, everybody says I'm a butthead because I like to do things like very organized. But by the time I got back to the truck and was getting the young dogs out, your dogs were there. Mm-hmm. So I fed them right in behind yours, right with yours when they crossed. That's another thing. You know, if your dogs are barking in a box, you got to stay back. Mm-hmm. You're going to turn it. And if that's what you want to do, you know, we tried that last time to turn it. Mm-hmm. You know, that's fine. But when you're just driving up and down the road, them scoundrels are just making noise for no reason. Like, I can't take it. And it pulls dogs to the road. Like, it will pull the dogs on the track because your dogs sound like they got it caught. Dogs are pack animals. Let's go back into the pack mentality. Dogs are pack animals, and if there's more noise coming out of here than what's going on up here, they're going to go check that out. And then, like BB just said, then we just lost 5 minutes trying to get everything redirected, straighten line back out. I just lost time. So if you have a box of hyenas, just lay back. Just lay back, let things cross, and then let the dogs cross, then port to it. Mm-hmm. And like I said, my box is built where I can shut it up, and my dogs don't have no business barking, and I made it that way for that reason. So, yeah, just let it cross and then pack it up that way. Or, like I said, we lay back a lot. Mm-hmm. I'll stay back where I can see that straight stretch, or I can get right in that curve where I can see up the road, mm-hmm. but I'll stay back off of it the best I can. If you pull up, especially if there's a group of you and there's 3 or 4 or 5 trucks, you got the truck noise, then you have the dogs barking, and what happens is the bear pops out, and then he turns and he goes right back in on his track, mm-hmm. and then you roll up there and you pack on that, and then you have that train wreck again because dogs are coming both directions, mm-hmm. and it takes a pretty seasoned, I've seen it happen, it takes a seasoned dog to figure that out.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I've seen bears get thrown away where they've popped out in the road and whirled back and gone on the same track that they come on. And I've seen at times where it takes you a long time to get that straightened out. To the point you're catching dogs up and you got those seasoned dogs that you know and trust, and then you send them back and, and you might even have to walk a loop in the woods to get back after mm-hmm. him, and hitting them like that, hitting them tight. If you're hitting them tight and trying to kill him, that's one thing. But even then, and it's hard. I mean, if he's got a lead on him, you don't know exactly where he's going to pop out. If he's pretty close, if they're tight on him, you can hit him pretty tight mm-hmm. and try and get up there and get your shot if you want to do it that way. So it just depends. I mean, we had an instance in Maine this past year where we hitted them, and we were hitting them pretty tight. And, I mean, the bear come right up to us. We saw the bushes shaking, and he whirled and just paralleled the road and then ducked back. I mean, maybe paralleled the road 10 yards and ducked right back. And then every dog that was running that bear swung out into the road, mm-hmm. and then you're trying to send them back. And, it's that's time. When they swing like that's time that bear is getting out further ahead of them. Versus making up that ground. It takes and they'll swing. All of them will swing. You might have some that will stick that track, but in all honesty, if they're sticking that track too much, they ain't making no time up. Mm-hmm. So most of the ones that we hunt, at least that I've seen, and just the experience of hunting with folks, they're going to swing a little bit, and they'll swing into a road. And a lot of times if they come up to a road, them dogs will swing out and across that road and check 10 yards mm-hmm. within on the other side to see if he went that way. I mean, that happened today, where when we turned them back, they swung in the road, and they swung back around in there and hit it off and took it on. But, I mean, when we caught them dogs, the reason we caught them is because we turned them back and they swung up there, and we didn't try to sick them on after them again, so.
Right. And that bear, and I want to go back and reiterate something, but that bear went back on his track about 100, 200 yards and then swung off of it. Mm-hmm. And that's something that goes back to what I just want to talk about. You got to know if your dogs are right up on it. Like if you're sitting in the road and you see the bear pop out and you look on your Garmin and they're 250 yards behind, then you know that you probably should, and it pops back up in there, you're going to have a train wreck. Mm-hmm. If they're 50 yards and the bear pops out, you're going to run him right back. You may catch him right there.
Yeah.
You may catch him.
Sometimes, but I've seen it where I think that bear goes right through the pack, and I don't know, they just miss it, or it's thick enough where that bear could be, 10 feet away from him. They don't see him or smell him, or, I mean, they're smelling bear anyway, and it turns into a train wreck anyway. So that's one of the biggest things as far as, trying to be efficient and not add time between the dogs and the bear. when they turn back, it's hard. It's one of those. It's not an easy feat to get past when you do that. And if you do that multiple times, I mean, it just adds more time between the dogs and the bear.
Yep. Yep. So, do we cover everything on packing? Don't face pack. Let it cross. If you are going to let it cross, lay off of it a little bit. Don't ride right up on it, because that's just going to cause it either to turn back or, if your dogs are barking, a lot of times it's going to pull dogs to the road. Do we cover all that?
Yeah, I think as far as packing goes, one thing about a group, and this is kind of a segue, but when his actual season, when the season's in and you're trying to harvest that bear, working together as a group is so important. So if you got somebody who has dogs and they're still in the box and you're actually working to try and take that bear, having them back off or having them in certain places where if a certain scenario plays out, that then they send them or something like that. Kind of thinking ahead of the game a little bit as far as, the what ifs while you're hunting. And not everybody does that. So and each group is different. Each group is going to have the different dynamics, and usually it's going to be somebody who's been doing a whole lot longer that he's going to call you out on it if you make a mistake. So, but I mean, when you're actually trying to get in front of them and actually take a bear, working together as that group. To try and cover those potential places, just take a walking baying bear, for instance. One of the big things we try to do here is radio communication, so you can talk and know where people are and know what's covered. And then two, if you have the certain people who are going to have whoever's shooting with them, trying to have that track code for their box so you can see where they are. So you can, if you see that person is coming up behind them, if that bear is walking and baying and they're walking on down behind them, then you can try and get in front of them and try and hit them. And then if if he's walking and baying, he smells you or sees you or whirls back or whatever, then that person who's behind them has that opportunity to potentially take that bear. So working like that, a running bear is a little different. You kind of have to know or understand how them bears are traveling wherever you are or whatever type of terrain you are. It's different here than it is in the mountains and versus Maine. They travel differently, and trying to understand that, whether or not they're going to cross in a bottom or follow a topo line across a road or something like that, and trying to hit them to take that bear, and then working as a group to, because some of these places that you hunt, it takes so long to get around. You might have one person go one way and one person go the other, so that way, whichever way he goes, you got him kind of covered. So thinking about that when you're hunting as a group, it can be very efficient if you got a group of people who understands that and is able to think for themselves and doesn't have to be told what to do. Those groups that can kind of work as a group and understand how to function to kind of meet whatever kind of goal that you got for that particular day that you're hunting or running.
Yeah, I want to hit on two more topics because we're going to run out of time. One of the things that I was thinking about when I was driving down here the other day, that like when, and I'm going to go back 15 years ago, 20 years ago, like when I first started rigging, I'd rig a track and I'd holler at everybody to come where I was at, and we would all turn loose a dog or two together. And what I have found through experience is that the longer you sit there and wait, the less chance of your dog being able to take off that rig and find that track, especially if it's an older track. The wind changes. Like I said, we talk about the environment all the time. It's changing. I mean, during microsecond, it's changing. Everything's changing. We find a track in the snow years ago. Everybody come and put a dog down and hunt. And we don't really do that anymore. And for me, like I said, I know why I do what I do is because, you know, I get a rig going around the mountain and I drive on by it and I holler at everybody and say, hey, you know, come on up here. You know, I've got a strike, and I go back by it. I may or may not strike that again because everything's changed. The wind may change. So that's my reason, because everybody kind of picks on me about turning my dogs loose. But like if my dogs strike, I'm putting them down, letting them go get it. I don't wait like I used to, and I don't know if that's bad or good. I can't say. You know, some people don't care. Some people fuss at me, but that's why I do what I do, is because I learned through the years that, you know, everything it's changing. It's changing quickly, and you know, I struck several bear this year that was 300-400 yards off the road. Mm-hmm. Dogs had to go get them, and I feel like if I sit there for 30 minutes waiting on everybody, it's kind of like it is in our tracking, our law enforcement tracking. Like I can be tracking a suspect, but if I keep pulling my dog off the track or having him down and wait on the team to catch up with me, the longer and the more I do that, the more distracted he becomes, or something else becomes interesting, and it takes away from that enthusiasm. And I feel the same way with that, is, you know, what I do. Any input on that?
I mean, for me, I don't rig much. I mean, if mine rig, it's hot. It's pretty hot. So we're a little different here, and just from my experience, I will say that, you know, one thing that just from going different places and even hunting around here, we do tend to split up a little bit more, to cover more ground, which is kind of the same thing, you know, when you're trying, it's one thing when you're hunting off a bait, you know, you kind of got a starting point, but if you're looking for that track and trying to strike it, you know, it's, you're way more efficient when you spread out. And then if somebody does strike something, then that's when you pick up and go and help to try and head or you know, try and get yours in on that particular race. You know, for us, it doesn't really matter who strikes it or where it is. You know, when we're hunting, you know, like here in Virginia, you know, you're spread out and just trying to get after him or get after a bear, you know, versus, you know, going to, say, Maine or North Carolina where there's a bait, you know, that you have a central starting point. Right. So it's a different hunting style no matter where, you know, for each situation. And we don't have the topography here that you got. So, I mean, it's not like we're going to have different currents up and down, you know, elevation, where I mean, you know, if the wind's right, they might smell them off a road, but for the most part, they'd have to be real close for them to be rigging out of the box or have just recently crossed.
Yeah. And I mean, today, I was just in the right place at the right time today, because if I would have followed you around, I'd have missed I'd have missed all that. I just happened to be goofing around in the right place today. And another thing, I see some comments on, and every state's different as far as their laws are concerned, but I've seen several people comment about tying dogs up at the tree. Like, you know, for me, I mean, as soon as before I do anything at the tree, I grab my old dogs and tie them back, and then I work my way up to the youngest dogs. For Virginia, you're not supposed to rerun. Mm-hmm. That's a law here, and I see a lot of things on social media about, don't tie. Why y'all tie them dogs up? Why y'all do this? You know, well, our law kind of says we have to, and plus, I don't want my dog getting pommeled at the tree. If he's made that whole race and he's clean and like unharmed, I'd prefer to keep him that way, or keep them that way. There's a lot of times we get in the tree and they bail out before you can get there. I mean, that happens. So I see that a lot. Each to their own. Everybody does something differently. But, you know, if you see guys in Virginia doing that, there's a reason why. Mm-hmm. Because the law pretty much says they have to.
Yeah. I mean, you know, for us, and I'm going to go to more of the harvesting side of the case, because, you know, usually if we're training, we're hunting only a handful of dogs or running a handful of dogs. So But when it comes to like actual hunting season and you're going in there to harvest that bear, there are situations that we do have here where you can't tie him back because he's up a bush. I mean, he might be just out of reach of a dog, and you can't get underneath him because as soon as you start, or even if you get that close, he's gonna come out, and then again, then you got another nasty situation at your hands that you're dealing with. So you just kind of have to look at each situation and figure out the best way you're going to approach it. So I mean here, we tie him back. I mean if we're able, we're going to tie him back, especially if he's way up in a tree. I mean, because there's nothing worse than a bear falling out and hurting a dog. Because that can happen even if you're not harvesting them. I've seen bears fall out of trees. They get scrounging around, or it's a dead limb or something, or something like that, or bark breaks away from the tree. If it's a rotten tree or something like that. So. It just depends. Each situation is different, and you just kind of have to evaluate it when you see it.
Let's talk about, and I want to talk about holes too, because I hate holes. But one thing that I've noticed down here that I see more at home is packing to trees. Y'all don't pack to trees, and I'm a proponent. I don't. I've went through a stage in my life where I did that some because I didn't have dogs that would tree a bear, and during some of those stages, I'd done it. But now, I'm not putting my dogs to a tree. Either they're making that race, or they're staying in the box. Now, you got a 300-pounder that won't stay up, I may give you some help, but I don't see you guys doing that as much as I see some of the guys at home doing that. I don't see the benefit of it. And if I do pack, if I have a young dog, I will walk the way the track went into the tree, hoping that dog will pick up the track and run into the tree. And I have not done that any this year. I've either turned it loose from the get-go or where I've packed in, but I'm not a proponent of that.
Yeah, the only time here is if, last week we had I had a dog that got out by himself and he ran, and you know how the Garmins are, they show treed, yeah. But here they're just as likely to be on the ground as he is to be treed. And so if it's one single dog or something like that, I'll send dogs in. And some dogs you can tell when they're treed. This particular dog, he kind of has the same bark whether he's treed or bayed, especially by himself. So, last week I packed some into it, and he had already treed it. But I didn't know. I didn't know if it was treed. I didn't know if it was on the ground. It was one of those situations where I'd rather get some help there versus going in there, finding out he's on the ground, and then trying to get somebody to send dogs to him or something like that. So, that's the only situation here that you could run into. But we don't, if we know it's treated, that's just more dogs that we got to lead out.
That's right.
And here, it's so hard to lead a dog through this thick stuff that it's, if we can avoid it, we don't do it. And, I'm like you, I'd rather the young dogs, I'd rather them run it and tree it, and if they're not a part of that race, then, as far as I'm concerned, they can stay in the box.
So let's do a little training here. Let's talk about drives, and let's talk about if you're packing the trees. I'm telling you guys, I train dogs for a living. Dogs are cheaters. Dogs are always going to do what's best for them. They are going to take the easy way out. If you pack your dogs to trees and pack your dogs to trees, the more you do that, you need to understand that the less you're going to get out of that dog, because he does not have to work to earn it. It's just like when I was going through decoy school with Franco Angelini. He's one of the top decoys in the world. And Franco said, Heath, you always make your dog attack the decoy, which means the dog has to be coming forward to grab the decoy. You never feed it to him. And I'm kind of demonstrating this with my arm to BB, which I know you guys can't see it. So if I stick my arm out in front of me, then the dog can come and get it. But if I push it out to him, then I'm putting it in his mouth. So I'm like doing room service for him. And Franco, you say, Heath, it's like you going in the yard and having one rabbit to choose from. The dog's got to work to get that rabbit. Or I walk into a yard with 20 rabbits, and the dog don't have to work to do that. The same thing goes in for some of the behaviors that we cause with these dogs is if you're packing the trees, your dog is going to be like, oh, I get to go in and have fun and bark and carry on, and I don't really have to work for it. So you got to think of the long-term effect of some of the things you're doing, you know. So if you do this over and over and over, you have to understand that your performance of your dog is going to be less and less and less because it's just like you feeding him in a food bowl and holding it up to his mouth. He don't have to work for it.
Well, I'll say that packing in the trees, I think that here, one of the big things that I've seen or issues that we've run into is when you got dogs that are like to tree, and if one dog trees, if we're hunting a particular block where there's a lot of water and they're right on a river and it's, you know, waist deep water, and you know the river might be chest deep, neck deep, you know, in different places and things like that. They get to the edge of that water, and the first thing they want to do is pull up and tree. And all it takes is one dog, you know, in some of them situations to pull up tree, and then next thing you know, you got another train wreck, and you got a slick tree, you know, 1,000 yards into, you know, thigh to neck deep water, and there's nothing more aggravating than yes. wading into a slick tree in that type of water. And that those dogs, we tell people not to bring them back.
Yeah. No, and I mean it makes perfect sense. I mean I don't want to climb to the top of the mountain to a slick tree either.
Yeah.
I mean I don't want to do it. So, you know, guys, just think about, you know, the long-term effect. If you want really good dogs, they've got to earn it. They've got to work for it, and they've got to be rewarded for the work they do, not that the work that they don't do. That's pretty simple. They earn what they do. They do not earn what they don't do. And holes. And this is where I hate as many times we've not had a hole down here. Do y'all get in holes much?
They'll get into stumps, underneath stumps, falling over trees where the root, you know, the roots are lifted up. They can get under them, or even hollow trees where the base is hollow. We've had that happen. We had one get into a hollow stump last year down in North Carolina, and that got a little gnarly. You know, it wasn't too bad because no other dogs could really get in there with it, but you know, it's a little different here. Usually our holes aren't but so big. So I mean, we've had instances where dogs have been, you know, bearing a bear, you know, in a hole, and had the bear come out and pull a dog into the hole, and luckily it was one of them holes that was so small he couldn't really do anything. So next time the bear come out to grab another dog, that dog come out, you know, and wasn't hurt too bad. But yeah, I mean, holes are tricky. They can get really tricky really fast, for sure.
And that's where I don't like the cheerleaders, because we had this happen during early season. We ended up catching in a hole that I did not know was there, and we got in there, and I'm like, crap. And here come 10 dogs that was not there, and a lot of the front dogs were getting pushed up in there. The cheerleaders were in there barking at the back. I don't like that. I you know, less is better in those situations. This was a bad one because it was funneled. There was no way out except to come right where we had to come to catch the dogs. So yeah, I don't like holes at all. I'd just soon stay out of them.
And here, you know, if you want to talk about the dogs that are cheerleaders, you know, our briars are so thick that it's the same. It's just like a hole. If you have cheerleaders and that bear breaks at them, they can't get out of the way. Especially one, because of the briars, and two, if there's dogs behind them, they can't move and get out of the way quick enough for to get out of that reach of that bear. So here, the briars are just so thick. And we have some briar bunches that literally the bear will get in, and the dogs will sit there and bay that bunch. And next thing you know, you'll see a dog that gets brave enough and goes through it where that bear son slipped out the back side.
Yep.
And the dogs didn't know that he slipped out. And the next thing you know, he's got a little bit of a lead on him, and they catch him again in the next briar bunch. And we have a lot of bears that do that. They'll go from briar bunch to briar bunch and stuff like that. So it's it's definitely different. I mean, at least there they can get it out the back, but some of them will just sit there. I mean, I've literally crawled into a skidder rut, in water, laid down in the water, crawled on my belly to get in there to a bear, and be 5 feet, 6 feet from the bear, and he's bayed up, and the dogs are baying him, and have to pour the water out of the gun barrel to get him killed. So I mean, here we don't have holes as much, but some of them briars, they act like a like a hole for them. So it's I mean, and when you're hunting as a group like that, understanding that, like if you got one that's walking and baying, or you got a bear, a lot of times the bears down here that might be a little rougher, if they're baying real hard and they just go silent all of a sudden, understanding that when they do that bear is running,
scattered,
and chasing them, and understanding that, depending on how many dogs is, and depending on the ground, more might be better, less might be better. It just depends on where they're at in the particular situation. And the bear, I mean, the bear is an entity of its own, and understanding and trying to be able to read what the dogs are telling you from how that bear is behaving, and then how you need to act based on that, when you're hunting together. That's for sure important.
Yeah, and we'll wrap this up. There's been several times that I have not packed dogs on a walking bear because too many, because they can't get out of the way. We had a pretty rough bear a couple years ago, had 11 dogs on it. 6 of them went to the vet. 3 of them got stapled and sewed up right there on the tailgate. And I think 2 of them is the only 2 that did not have holes in them. Everything else was vet or stapled. So just knowing that, I didn't have any dogs on it, and I was doing my best to help them try to get it killed because it was tearing dogs up. But piling more dogs on there wasn't going to help that matter. Yeah,
I mean, it's we ran into one of those in Maine last year, where it was a rougher type bear, and then once you realize that, especially during kill season or something like that, it's time, you need to work together as a group to get him killed, and having that communication to work together to kill him is real important, especially if that's what you're trying to do. And I'm a big fan of killing those rough ones.
Yes.
I mean, I'm a big fan of it. I mean, there's nothing I like. I hate to say it, but I do like it when we kill those rough ones.
Yeah.
We've had an instance where we've been called, here you can deer hunt, and we had hunted all day in North Carolina and got a call into Virginia, and I think a particular bear ended up killing, I don't know, it was 4 or 5 deer dogs and hurting a whole bunch more, and she was mean, but the thing is, you knew it, so it wasn't no playing around. It wasn't no, it was definitely, get it killed and get it killed as quick as you could. And but the deer dogs are a little different temperament, and they don't know any better. So it's a little different when you put the bear dogs behind a bear when they do that. We were real lucky there. We didn't get nothing hurt too terribly bad, but we did end up getting it killed. But that's and having a good group of guys that you can rely on is so important when you do get on them rough ones. Or I say important. It just makes it so much less dangerous for the dogs and even the people itself. So, I mean, that's definitely an important part of it.
Yeah, and that gets into a whole nother topic that we'll save for another day is, killing bear on the ground it takes patience and experience.
Yeah.
Because they're, the dogs are they're the main driving factor of that. And I know that I seen a Paul Laney just post that one of his dogs got killed last week by a hunter.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And I mean, I hate that because dogs are so valuable. I mean, not only as a hunting tool, but as a partner and part of the family. I mean, we spend tons of time with our dogs like everybody else does, but I mean, they're a part of our life, and we're with them every day, and we're doing stuff with them every day, and you never want to see that happen. So bear on the ground's tough.
Yeah, I mean, and again, I mean, we take a lot of people in. I mean, most of the people that we carry in to kill a bear, it's usually their first, or they're very inexperienced in going in to kill a bear. And we're taking them in, and then usually we have a couple, 2 or 3 people, and then usually there's somebody who's more experienced with them, and that's where that group comes in to be such a big factor, to be able to work together and make sure, one, it's done quickly, and then also done, safely, for you and the dogs, because I've had instances that, I mean, any bear hunter has had an instance where things can turn western and get a little wild,
Yeah.
I mean, Doug he said, well, that's just bear hunting.
Yeah.
So, but that's probably one of the biggest things about hunting with a group is being able to have that person, if you got that person that you trust and rely on that's covering that road and with that particular shooter that day, and being able to trust them with your dogs or whoever else's dogs that might be in there, and having that trust that, one, that they're going to do the job that needs to be done, and then 2, make sure that it is done as safely as possible. I mean, that's a big thing that we do. I mean, for us, I mean, like I said, we're carrying so many people, and even in Maine, a lot of the guys that go in Maine, they don't have that experience. And I don't know how many people I've carried in that, I mean, you look at their hands or they're into that gun barrel and it is shaking like crazy, like a leaf. And, and trying to understand that, and then talking them down and trying to calm them down to be able to get it taken care of, but it's definitely that. And then them also being in shape enough to get to the places that they need to be. I mean, that's probably the number one thing we run into, is trying to have somebody that's fit enough to move to be able to head or get into a bear or whatever. Even if it's a treed bear, some of the ground we got, they might be crawling for, hundreds of yards to be able to get in there. I mean, I carried a guy into a tree one time. He said, I'll never do this again. Smoked probably 5 cigarettes at the base of the tree, never even went and looked at his bear. He shot out, and he said, this is too much like work.
Yeah, well, that's right. Well, baby, let's cut this off and get in bed. Like I said, you cut me up way past my bedtime. We're in the midnight hours now. And hopefully we can get after 1, maybe 2 tomorrow, and have a couple good races.
Yeah, hopefully we can find one. They're eating the peanuts pretty good now. So
yeah, we took a little walkabout this season, didn't we? Yeah, it looked good, I tell you that. It looked real good. But guys, thanks for joining us. Go to our website, houndsmanxp.com. Look at the merchandise. We got a lot of shirts going out, and look at our sponsors. You got, GoWild, Cajun Lights, OnX. All those have discount codes. Dogs Are Treed. I mean, I can keep going. They're what keeps us running, and you need to keep up with what's going on in Colorado with the ban on lion hunting, cat hunting. Need to keep up with that. So everybody do what you can to help. And until next time, thank you for helping us teach, train, and learn.